emphasis on the 17th century. He comes from Peter Tusor University, where he has pursued large parts of his career after studying at Virginia and with habilitation at the University of Szeged. He has been chairing a dedicated research group on Vatican-Hungarian relations, which has been running for more than a decade, which is also connected to two large and important scholarly series that he's supervising. And so I'm delighted to give the floor to you for a presentation on an episode in the 1660s before the prehistory of the Pragmatic Sanction.
Chairman, thank you for this kind introduction. Dear colleagues, first of all, I thank the organizers for the invitation. I am neither an expert on Habsburg politics nor on the 18th century. My main field of research is the relations between Hungary and the Holy See in the 17th century. In my short presentation, I would like to make just a few remarks based on my research in the Vatican archives. These remarks may be, however, useful as a chronological prelude to the ongoing discourse here on Pragmatica Sanctio. Il negozio successione, il quale, come si è detto altre volte, è il più importante che oggi sia in tutta la cristianità. In other words, the succession of the imperial, Czech, and Hungarian thrones, as we have said several times, is today the most important matter in all of Christendom. The sentence written in the Papal Secretariat of State in Rome in 1616, good century before the Pragmatica Sanctio, was promulgated in 1723. As we know, the succession of the Habsburg in 1618 was already prepared by the treaty between the Spanish and Austrian branches by the secret Monarchy agreement of 1617, Pactum de Successione Regnorum Hungariae et Bohemiae. Thanks to Péter Tusor, the succession of the Graz branch, the Hungarian throne was smooth. Ferdinand II was quickly elected by the Protestant Majority Diet on the 18th May 1618, thanks to Tusman's skillful timing and his gold grants. The event took place at the last minute, 5 days before the Prague defenestration. It is well known that the inadequate settlement of the Bohemian succession led to a general European cataclysm, a 30-year-long war. The decisive reason for the appointment of the Jesuit Tusor as Archbishop of Esztergom in 1616 was precisely to secure the future of the Habsburg succession in Hungary, for both the papal and the Habsburg policy, personally for Melchior Klézer, mentioned before by Tadeusz Obor. In 1625, Tusor had also played a major role in the election of Ferdinand III as King of Hungary by the Hungarian voters, while Ferdinand II was still alive. True, he had a much easier time of it here than in 1618, since it was a matter of electing a lineal heir. The election of Ferdinand IV in 1647 and then of Leopold I in 1655 proved to be similarly smooth as earlier. While in 1625 the role of Archbishop of Pázmány and also the role of Palatine Miklós Esterházy was noteworthy, in 1647 and especially in 1655 only the Archbishop of Esztergom, György Lippai, determined the course of the election. After the Diet of Sopron, 1625, Pázmány and Esterházy were awarded by Spanish pension the purple and the gold fleece. However, György Lippai, who had organized 2 successful elections of Hungarian kings, did not become cardinal, although he had aspired to it. From this brief account, 2 important points should be highlighted. The first is that in the thinking and the practice of Hungarian political elite, the problem of the election of a king was a central and fundamental reality. In the 1610s, 20s, 40s, and 50s. What is more, if we go back to 1608, we can see that either the solution to the internal crisis of the Habsburg dynasty, with the enthronement of Matthias II, or the creation of the public law model, constitutional model in Hungary in the 17th century, was based on the effective exercise of the right of the Hungarian orders to choose the king. The other aspect was the decisive role and influence of the status ecclesiastics and its respective leader, the Archbishop of Este, in the conduct, the election of the monarch, the new monarch. Here is, dear colleagues, the background and explanation of Imre Esterházy's rule in the 17th century. Historical antecedents and models of it. On the one hand, the living idea and ongoing practice of the election of kings, on the other, the prominent role played by the status ecclesiasticus and its leader. These are the defining principles of Hungarian public law and politics in the 17th century. All this is very important to underline when we consider the domestic political actions surrounding the extinction of the male branch of the Austrian Habsburgs. Respected conference, dear colleagues, it was not at the beginning of the 18th century and not with the leading role of Imre Esterházy, Bishop of Zagreb, and later Archbishop of Esztergom, that the Hungarian political elite began to deal with the extinction of the male branch of the Habsburg dynasty. It was in 1665 that the vision of the imminent succession to the throne and the related planning first came to the forefront of the thinking of the Hungarian political elite. 1665. So far, mainly the issue of the Spanish succession from this period has attracted the attention of researchers. King Philip IV of Spain died on the 17th September 1665. His sole heir and successor was the 4-year-old Charles II. For him, as we know, ultimately wrongly, no one predicted long life. Just a year and a half later, Louis XIV launched for devolution. However, later developments burst all the survival of the future Joseph I and Charles III, protagonists of this conference, make it much less prominent in historical literature, thinking that in the autumn of 1665, not only the Spanish, but simultaneously also the Austrian branch was on the brink of extinction. Not only the Spanish, but also the Austrian branch was on the brink of extinction. The Casa Austriaca, death had brought in great harvest in the previous decade, and not only in the Spanish branch. It began with the unexpected death of Ferdinand IV. After the heir to the throne, his father Ferdinand III died at the age of 48. Now I omit enumerate all the details and ways we can see all the archduques who passed away suddenly. My PPT. Let's turn to the point. In the space of less than 3 years, Between 1662 and 1665, 4 Austrian archdukes passed away suddenly and unexpectedly, aged 48, 34, 24, and 14. Furthermore, by the end of September 1665, no direct female descendant, adult and fit to rule, represented the Austrian Habsburg any longer because of the death of Maria Anna of Arden. Only living male member of the dynasty in Austria at this time was the 25-year-old and still unmarried Leopold I by the autumn of 1665. As a result of the marriage, the Habsburgs had a weak immune system that could not withstand frequent and increased infections. The genetic causes were not known, but the fact that the death rate was higher than usual, furthermore, the increased exposure to infections was obvious to contemporaries. Their fears or expectations about the future of the dynasty were well-founded. As we know, like Ferdinand IV, Joseph I also died of very early in 1711 at the age of 32. Dear colleagues, in the autumn of 1665, the whole court of Vienna was terrified of the extinction of the Austrian branch. The Empress Dowager Eleonora Gonzaga was so concerned about her stepson, Leopold I, that she expressed her worries before the papal nuncio Giulio Spinola, I quote, about the emperor's sad disposition, his poor health and frequent illnesses. Citation ended. According to the nuncio, at the time Leopold I himself feared that, and said, I quote too, God, because of his own sins and those of his predecessors, was about to annihilate the house of Austria with his person. But he submitted the divine decree with humility and serenity, and entrusted everything to the will of the Almighty in his very uncertain succession, life and reign. His very uncertain succession, life and reign. Citation ended. In view of all this, it is not particularly surprising that the question of the succession to the Hungarian throne, in the event of the breakup of the Austrian branch of Habsburg dynasty, was given special attention at various meetings of Hungarians who were already dissatisfied with the Peace of Washington 1664. At the end of November 1665, György Szelecsény, the Hungarian Chancellor and Court, Archbishop of College of Bács, and a month and a half later, already Supreme Chancellor and Archbishop of Esztergom, the head of the Hungarian Church, informed the papal nuncio in Vienna, the utmost secrecy about the fact of these meetings and in fact, concepts that had been raised in Hungary. Giulio Spinola was allowed to communicate all this only to the Pope Alexander VII. Szelecsény was very diplomatic about the possible imminent death of Leopold I before the papal nuncio. In his words, although the inhabitants of the country were, and I quote, of various religions, they are united in their attention to the frail physical condition of the emperor, whom they love as a prince blessed with angelic qualities. But they are also united in thinking of his successor, in case his seat should be torn, lest they should remain subject to the tyranny of the Turks. Quotation end. Thanks to this Vatican source, we learn about the competition between three different concepts. One is that in due course a strong monarch will be elected king who will be able to guarantee the security of the country, the security of Hungary. In all likelihood, we are thinking here of a French orientation similar to the contemporary Polish ideas. Indeed, the idea of electing a Bourbon monarch was put forward during the conspiracy. The other popular idea among the nobility was that the security of Hungary, the security of the kingdom and its liberties would be best guaranteed if Hungary were part of the Holy Roman Empire and incorporated into its system as an electorate. According to Sanction, on the other hand, Catholics, and I quote, who have an ancient and well-rooted respect for the Holy See and regard it as their immediate patron, do not agree with the above proposals. Bourbon King or incorporation and do not agree with these proposals. The Catholics, this is to say Sanction, and those bishops who were with him would be able to carry out their own plans on occasion by relying on their military and their castles, above all Nitra, come chiave del regno at that time. The idea, of course, Catholics, the idea of Selection, would not have meant the incarnation of Hungary into the papal states, but merely the exercise of papal investiture. That is, the papal legitimation of a new, strong and capable ruler to be elected in return for a suitable annual tribute to the Holy See. We can read all this in the report of Giulio Spinola. Dear colleagues, allow me to add some remarks to the content of this truly sensational Nuncio report, of this truly sensational dispatch of Giulio Spinola, the Cardinal Giulio Spinola. The first remark: the report of Nuncio does not speak of secret, segrete, but of closed meetings, strettissime conferenze. These were attended by delegates of the nobility, deputati. It is clear that this was not an illegal conspiracy, but the usual preparation for the exercise of the right to elect a ruler, as they did decades before. The 16th, 10th, 20s, 40s and 50s. We have seen the examples. The second remark is that the status ecclesiasticus was also involved in these negotiations. It is assumed that this kind of thinking went on until December 1666, when Leopold I married. A marriage of the monarch, or more precisely his marriages, took these discussions off the agenda, as did the anticipation surrounding the frequent pregnancies. Nevertheless, acute anxiety also recurred later in the imperial court, as in January 1670, when Leopold I was lying with an extremely high fever for months. However, after the initial fears and uncertainty of 1655 to 1678, only the births of Joseph I and Charles III brought real reassurance. But the very subject of this conference shows that this calm lasted only a few decades. Third, in 1664, 1667, in the first phase of the so-called Wesselényi movement, we can recognize a real legal aspect in terms of Hungarian public law and political practice. However, the actual conspiracy and uprising in 1670, this kind of thinking was already unacceptable to the Viennese court, which began to take revenge and prepare an absolutist regime. Obviously, these negotiations formed the basis for the accusation of Péter Tusor and Ferenc Nádas about the involvement of the status ecclesiasticus, above all Archbishops Esztergom and Kalocsa, György Szerepcsényi and György Széchenyi in the conspiracy. It should be noted that as early as 1665, also the papal nuncio was astonished by the Hungarian prelate's arguments. It is not by chance that there is not a response from the papal diplomacy to this unrealistic Hungarian proposition of the papal investiture, an idea of the 16th century. The fourth remark. To the theme of the present conference has particular relevance the fact that female Habsburg succession is not envisaged. It is true that the personal conditions for this were not really in place at the time. On the Austrian side, there were the unfit to rule Princess of Mantua and two underage Archduchesses of Tyrol. The Viennese court obviously had a plan B in case of the death of Leopold I. Without war, Hungary would not have been allowed to leave. By dynastic law, the succession of Charles II was to be enforced. However, the pan-European complications of this development, whether from Louis XIV, the imperial elective princes, or the election Ottomans, we dare not even think about here and now. Fifth, most important remark, the unexpected reward of our research is that we can perhaps understand the date and context of the creation of one of the most important state policy documents of the 17th century, the famous Reflections, Hungarian oktatási jó elmélkedésbe, and even determine its authorship. The treatise analyzes in detail the relationship of Hungarians to the surrounding peoples. It has their geopolitical position. It rejects both Central European, Ottoman, Austrian, Czech-Moravian, Polish, and the Eastern European, Russian, as well as the Italian and French orientations on the basis of various current and historical arguments. The Reflections leaves open only the possibility of an incorporation into the Holy Roman Empire, which is mentioned in the Nuncio's report too, and urges that this be prepared and settled as soon as possible. Dear colleagues, it is quite obvious that such an act would have had absolutely no reality in the context of a revolt against the legitimate emperor who was still alive. It would have been little theoretical sense except the event of the succession to the throne, the Hungarian throne. We know from other sources that Ferenc Nádas was the main advocate of the incorporation, the ideal incorporation into the Holy Roman Empire. He may therefore be author of the Reflections, Hungarian oktatási jó elmélkedésre. Ez Gyula Pauler has already recognized, and not Miklós Zéli, az Ágnes Ervárkonyi szólt, not only in this case. Dear colleagues, in conclusion, allow me to formulate the thesis of my short presentation. The historical narrative, whether by Henrik Marcali, Gyula Szekfő, or Győző Ember, and others, purpose, begins to discuss the immediate antecedents of the Pragmatica Sanctio in 1687, the year of the enactment of the hereditary kingship, or in 1703, the year of the Pactum Mutuae Successionis. However, it seems that in the future it will be worth mentioning also the year of 1665-66. And it will also be worthwhile to include in the discussion the text of reflections, the text of the oktatás jó elmélkedését. Thank you for the kind attention.